Hey, James, you know that wild story brewing like right now somewhere in America? It's actually kind of terrifying to think about, really. Someone's hand, right, is literally hovering over a submit button, a portal, the Cape portal, I think, and it's about a massive refund. I mean, we're talking $166 billion, split amongst 330,000 importers.
Yeah, Amara, that's precisely it. And it's all because the Supreme Court, back in February, ruled that these tariffs, they were never legally authorized in the first place, you know? So legally, the money's owed. But here's the kicker. On the TV, like in the background, the president is calling anyone who files for this refund brilliant and honorable. But then in the same breath, he's saying he will remember the ones who do, which puts a whole different spin on it, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it's such a loaded situation. So what are these 4 simultaneous resolution gates actually measuring? You know, when one of those gates literally decides whether the measurement itself continues. It's just wild. I'm Amara, and with me today is James Mitchell, business analyst at Venria. James, let's just jump right into that decision, that hand. You've got a CEO there with fiduciary duty, cash flow needs, a statutory entitlement, and then a televised threat. What's going through her head? Well, she's reading that form, right? And she's doing math that she really wasn't trained to do, actually. The legal math, that part's simple enough. The court ruled, the refund is owed, the portal opened April 20. But the optimization function, that's not the legal math at all. It's what does remember actually cost? Over what time frame? Under what conditions? She can't price it directly, you know? No one has priced it for her. And the decision, it just has to clear this week anyway. So she's really stuck.
So, the calendar's just compressing everything, isn't it? I mean, April 29th, 2 p.m. Eastern, foam MC rate decision. Then May 1st, 10 a.m. Eastern, the April ISM manufacturing PMI. And then between mid-June and mid-August, the Ninth Circuit rules on Nevada versus Kalshi, Robinhood, and Crypto.com. And then, July 24th, the statutory sunset of the Section 122 tariff regime. 4 gates, 90 days. And the Kalshi book, you've told me, is pricing each one of these.
Yeah, it really is, Amara. And what's fascinating is that the book, it's actually been ahead of the public narrative for the full intermeeting period, on 2 of them at least. It's kind of like a peek behind the curtain, you know?
Wow, okay, walk me through those 3. What are we seeing?
Right, so first, the FOMC contract is at 0.96 hold. That one, it's effectively closed, really. The volatility there is all about the dissent count. Governor Moran dissented in March for a cut, remember? So the live question on the 29th is whether a second dissenter shows up, because a second dissenter means the internal coalition on inflation persistence, it's cracking, and the next meeting's contract, it'll reprice massively. Then the ISM man contract, that's at 0.68 sub 50. Public narrative, it sits near 0.50, that's 18 points. The book, it's been carrying that gap since before the March print landed at 52.7, while the prices paid index surged to 78.3, highest reading in nearly 4 years. It's a big, big gap there.
And the SCOTUS cert contract on the sports event federalism question, what's happening there?
That's priced at 0.42. The narrative's around 0.30, so 12 points. The book is pricing a Ninth Circuit ruling for Nevada, an explicit split with the Third Circuit's 2-1 for Kalshi on April 6th, and then the court taking cert on the split. The narrative, though, it's pricing a world where none of that chains together. It's totally different, you know?
Okay, so let's tighten that logic a bit, right? We have these 4 phenomena in close temporal succession. February 20th, learning these sources v. Trump. The Supreme Court strikes IEPA tariff authority 6-3. February 24th, the administration invokes Section 122. March 5th, 24 state attorneys general sue at the Court of International Trade. March 11th, USTR initiates Section 301 investigations against 16 economies for excess manufacturing capacity and 60 plus for forced labor enforcement. 4 actions, 19 days. That's a lot, James. It's a lot.
It really is. And if you look at it sequentially first, right? The court strikes the unbounded authority. Then the administration, it substitutes a capped time-limited authority. The states, they sue the substituted authority, but before that suit can even clear, the successor authority, it's already under construction. So the real question here is whether this is like a retreat under pressure, or if it's actually a coordinated operating pattern that they're just following.
Coordinated operating pattern. I like that. So name the mechanism then for me. What are we actually seeing here?
It's what I call serial authority substitution racing appellate litigation speed. The CIT hearing on Section 122 was April 10th. A ruling is possible before July 24th, but the sunset is July 24th. If the CIT strikes Section 122 in June, the authority is already like inside 30 days of expiring, right? If the ruling comes after July 24th, the authority has just, expired on its own. Either way, the litigation capacity the 24 states deployed, it just gets spent on an authority the administration had already scheduled to replace. Meanwhile, Ambassador Greer has signaled accelerated Section 301 findings before the sunset. The public-facing reading is that ambition is outstripping infrastructure, but the operational reading is that ambition is the infrastructure.
Ambition is the infrastructure. That's profound. Okay, so here's what that actually looks like in a specific week, right? An importer who files CAPE, they collect a refund under a regime the administration has on television called disloyal. An importer who waits for Phase 2 rules that haven't been issued, well, they face a new tariff architecture under Section 301. No 15% cap, no 150-day clock. So the fiduciary decision, which is take the refund, it converges with the political cost, and the political decision, forgo the refund, it converges with the cash flow hit. The optimization function, it has no clean minimum here, does it?
No, it absolutely doesn't. And this, Amara, this is what a seam in the pivot architecture looks like when the system is actually working as designed. It's not a bug, it's a feature in a twisted way. And that seam, that's precisely where the harder return lives, And I really want to spend a minute on the Kalshi platforms themselves, because the Ninth Circuit hearing on April 16th, that's doing something the other three gates are not.
Ah, yes. The instrument measuring its own survival. That's the one.
Exactly, right? The platforms, they price FOMC contracts, they price ISM contracts, they price Supreme Court cert contracts, they price the Section 122 sunset trajectory. But if the Ninth Circuit rules for Nevada, an explicit circuit split, that forces the court to take the case. And the pre-cert interval, that's when the platforms operate under maximum existential ambiguity. Judge Ryan Nelson at oral argument, he called the platforms framing sophistry to the nth degree. He even read Rule 40.11 aloud and told counsel that is not what 40.11 says. I mean, the panel, they are just not being polite at all.
So, wow, the instrument that has been pricing this entire administrative gap is itself on one of the four clocks. And the instrument that could actually price its own survival, that SCOTUS cert contract, sitting at 0.42, is the one contract where the narrative, it just sits furthest behind the market. It's almost like a paradox, isn't it?
It is, and you can really port the sovereign debt analogy here, Amara. When a finance ministry announces a budget the market doesn't believe, yields blow out before the bonds even clear, right? That's continuous pricing of sovereign credibility. And the mechanism it ports to policy and judicial outcomes. The signal function ports, but the discipline function, it lacks a bit. A bad implied probability on cert doesn't cost the Solicitor General's office borrowing capacity, It costs narrative capital. And narrative capital, that's burnable in ways sovereign credit just isn't. That's the gap, really, between having a thermometer and having a thermostat.
A thermometer versus a thermostat. So bring this all the way back to that CEO, her hand on the button, right? She's not pricing cert contracts herself. She's not looking at these Kalshi markets directly. She's actually making the decision the cert contract and the ISM print are about to resolve around her. She's kind of trapped in the middle of all of this, isn't she?
She is the cert contract, actually. Or really, 330,000 of her are. The aggregate filing pattern over the next 6 weeks, that's itself a continuous price, not traded on Kalshi, but it's observable through CBP data, through law firm advisory bulletins, through the trade press. If filing volumes hold, well, the remember comment, it just didn't operationally price, did it?
If filing volumes collapse, though, the threat did price, and importers accepted a reversion risk in exchange for avoiding political attention. Either resolution, it feeds back into the Section 301 construction, because Section 301 is being built against a behavioral equilibrium that the CAPE filings are currently establishing. It's a very dynamic situation.
So, here's the harder return then. Walk it through for me, James. What happens now?
Okay, so the pivot architecture, that's the product. It's not the residue of a legal defeat, it is the product. IEPA struck February 20th. Section 122 invoked February 24th. By July 25th, the statutory sunset has passed. If Section 301 findings are in place, and GRIA is absolutely racing for this, the new authority has no rate cap and no time limit. If Section 301 findings are not in place, though, the behavioral pattern the prior 8 months established continues to shape importer decisions, trading partner negotiations, and court dockets regardless. This is like what Velocity traded for durability produces. The opposition, they spend litigation capacity on authorities that just expire before rulings clear. The administration spends attention on the next pivot. By August, even a CIT ruling against Section 122 is reversing a rate that already isn't being applied under that statute, The behavioral equilibrium, Amara, that is becoming the durable object. The legal authority, that's the sacrificial one here.
The behavioral equilibrium is the durable object. That's chillingly brilliant. So the book, the Kalshi book, it knows this, which is why the SCOTUS cert contract at 0.42, that's actually the contract that matters most. It's the one contract where if you watch the ruling window close without the market repricing, you would know the instrument had stopped functioning, not because nothing happened, but because the signal no longer propagated to price. It's like the market just went silent, right?
The signal will propagate, I promise you. The Third Circuit, it already ruled for Kalshi on April 6th. If the Ninth rules for Nevada, the split is explicit, cert is virtually obligated, and that 0.42, it will reprice towards 0.60 or higher inside 48 hours. You gotta watch the book, not the court in this case. The court, it announces. The book, it reveals. It's quite something.
Wow. Okay, so 4 gates. April 29th, the dissent count at the FOMC, May 1st, whether the April ISM print lands below 50, between mid-June and mid-August, whether the Ninth Circuit produces the split, July 24th, whether Section 301 findings arrive before the Section 122 clock runs. The book is on all 4, but the book you're saying is also one of them. It's like a nested doll of uncertainty.
It really is, and you will know which way the fork resolved by watching where the 0.42 settles in the 48 hours after the Ninth rules. If it prints above 0.60, the instrument survived the round. If it doesn't, the instrument measuring the administrative gap was just, dismantled by the administrative gap's extension. One gate is the thermometer. The other 3, they're the room it is measuring. And we are about to find out whether the room still contains the thermometer at all.
Thank you so much for joining us today, dear listener. We truly appreciate you tuning in. Please, a like, a comment, a share, or a subscribe would mean the world to us and help us continue to unravel these fascinating, often chilling threads. James, that image you just painted, a room, a thermometer, and the very question of its existence, it's almost too poetic for such high-stakes finance.
Indeed, Amara, the stakes are profoundly high, not just for the Kalshi platforms, but for the entire system of predictive analytics that underpins so much of our understanding in these turbulent times. The market, in this unique instance, is forced to internalize its own potential demise, and that creates an unparalleled feedback loop.
So it's not just about predicting an outcome anymore, is it? It's about the market itself becoming a player in its own survival game. The irony is palpable. One of the gates isn't just a measurement, it's a battleground for the very concept of measurement.
Precisely. The Ninth Circuit ruling isn't merely a data point, it's an existential test. And how that 0.42 contract reprices will be the most direct observable signal of whether the thermometer remains a viable instrument. It will dictate the future of this particular form of market insight.